Sorry Connection Dipped, What Did You Hear? We're a group of 7 Central St Martin's students.
Give us money back.
Led by Annie Go and Robin Buckley.
How and why did we move from sounding the margins to this resulting audio broadcast? I think having sort of studied a lot of really interesting uses of sound in documenting activism that people were doing, like in LA with Ultra Red, and then thinking about oral histories in terms of documenting with sound the narratives that might not necessarily have been committed to writing in history books. The general consensus was that, despite the name of the project sounding the margins, none of us are really marginal characters, but we all interpreted the processes of these groups of people using sound in these different ways in terms of taking action and recording people's personal histories just in a way that is sort of local to each of us.
It almost wouldn't feel right to kind of claim to be marginalized people just for the sake of a audio broadcast. Like, I don't think that's something that people should want to kind of do, you know?
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of really important history we're going over, like with Ultra Red, a lot of the philosophy of that.
Listening begins with the intention of learning, but we struggle with what we hear as we sit around the table or stand in the street together. Have we actually been touched by what we've heard?
And the practices of that came about from the Silence Equals Death AIDS movement in the 80s. So yeah, it would feel kind of wrong to just, I don't know, kind of lay claim to that history or those processes without, you know, like, or even have a conversation with these processes without engaging with the fact that, well, I know at least I'm coming from more of a privileged position than that. I'm not living in poverty or being hated for who I am, you know, being neglected. So I think it's important to like acknowledge that before we kind of adopt these processes of like listening.
The name Sounding the Margins is from that Pauline Oliveros
collection of essays.
Yeah, she was quite a marginalised figure in a way that we are not, and in a way that she sort of is no longer, given that she's sort of canonised in a slightly niche way, albeit now.
Yeah.
But we arrived at Sorry Connection Dipped.
Largely because our connection kept dipping, I think.
It was a
It's as simple
meme.
as that.
It became...
Still is, man.
Like us in an echo shape. For me, the most important aspect the one I've connected with most has been the oral histories talk from
Charlie and Andrea.
I found the talk they did really interesting. It opened the door to oral histories to me because it made me realise anyone can sort of do it. It doesn't have to be this sort of really academic process that's only carried out by institutions like the British Library. They rely heavily on normal people just recording what is going on around them at the time, and that is almost the way that sheds light on things that wouldn't be seen otherwise is what I've found to be the most important thing out of doing this, exposing those things that you know to be going on that other people might not be aware of.
Pretty good.
Sorry, connection dipped.
In this track, I envision as humans on the same boat together, sailing in a sea of data and technology against one common storm, the virus.
This is Night Vision Castle Adventures with Hellhound and the Bearers of Death.
got some spooky Bram Stoker vibes from that, like being trapped in a castle with wild dogs woofing outside.
Like Hounds of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Like hellhounds.
Like I came in and there's background noise and they're me speaking to my granddad about the dogs barking outside the window whilst this was happening. So it's a bit of an interesting, strangely poised recording.
I thought there was something really interesting, like spatially in that recording, because it kind of sounds like there's quite a lot of like reverberation. It sounds like you're in a really kind of open, like large kind of chamber, like maybe like a swimming pool or something like that. I feel like quite like an oppressive atmosphere inside like a giant building.
Like in Dracula or something like that, and with these eerie sounds. I woke up one morning and it was like paying it down outside. It was raining really heavily, and I had wanted to make like music or like sort of organically generated music for quite a while using the rain, and I didn't really know how to do it. And then I was going to go play my drums, and I was like, I could just take all my cymbals outside, basically. So I decided to do that. Took them all outside and stuck them under a tree and just let like raindrops hit them, and sort of like added different cymbals in at different points, and made various different recordings, and even added like drum skins and stuff like that. And then took away, because the rain began to like slowly stop, so all the recordings were getting quieter and quieter until you couldn't really like hear it, and there was like one drop every like 30 seconds or something like that was falling on one of the cymbals or the drum skin. So I just decided to stop, and then I edited them all together by basically just stitching them, not really changing anything about them, but just putting each recording one after the other, so it like begins and then peaks, and then with like a crescendo, and then begins to slowly peter out as the rain began to stop.
I was just talking to my family about that rainy day fund thing. Ridiculous. They just have a bunch of money like stashed away for this type of situation, and they're not financing it.
Give us a third of our money back.
want our money back.
I want my money back.
This track is based off of an ecosphere containing a murky pond environment inhabited by snails.
Sorry, connection dipped. What do you hear? Sorry, connection dipped. What do you hear?
What made us want to record our grandparents? So, we had that talk with Charlie and Andrea, Charlie Morgan from the oral history section of the British Library, and Andrea Zaza from the sound archive. And basically, after having listened to Charlie talk about what oral histories was about and the fact that it's a means of recording smaller histories which could be glossed over in the bigger picture, I suddenly realised actually I've got grandparents who've been through various different experiences that I have very little clue about and would like to learn about. And Charlie mentioned that starting with family members and friends is a really good way of learning how to interview people. It's a good stepping stone in the process of interviewing. And so that's when it began. I talked to my mum about whether there were any interesting moments that she remembers from when she was younger. And she mentioned that my grandma had taken her to Greenham Common to go protest with plenty of other women who were all part of the CND movement in the early 80s. She kind of, her memory of the events that she saw and stuff like that was quite vague, so it was more of like a general overview.
Yeah.
So the larger picture of the whole event, which is still interesting, but
and it's still quite a pertinent cause now as well.
I asked her about what she knew of was going on now, and she said that it's still her friend who she went to all these events with is still a member of the CND, but she hasn't been a member since the 80s, I think.
So, but while I was at college, CND came into being because of nuclear weapon proliferation. I joined the CND at college, and that kind of stayed with me. I don't think I was a fully active member when I left college, but when Greenham Commons started, when the women all decided to become active, I, again, on the periphery, agreed with them wholeheartedly. So I only went about 3 times, I think. Once on a bus when we were doing a mass demo there, and we were holding hands all around the perimeter of the airbase on Greenham Common and tying ribbons on the fence. And the whole area was surrounded by that expanding wire fencing, the mesh stuff. We held hands around the perimeter, and then on other occasions made individual trips down there. We took things they needed, like I think food and clothing or warm things and so on. We took things like that down for them. On one occasion, we went to one of the gates, because there were, I don't know, I'm presuming there were 4 gates, might have been more. One of them, I can't remember which it was mainly lesbians in the camp, and each gate had its kind of own identity. The people camping there were, all different. I think we were just fed up with men not doing very much. And the women's movement was growing, becoming very strong then. This is early 80s. This is Germaine Greer and, the Female Eunuch and all those books out. And women were beginning to think, we need to make a stand here. We want to promote peace, not war. We're sick of war being prioritised and all the money going to nuclear weapons instead of to social services and hospitals and so on. And I think it was just the boom, the women riding on the crest of the feminine outbreak, the women becoming really strong in politics and making their feelings known generally throughout the world. It wasn't just the UK.
In the Guardian article posted in 2017, How the Greenham Common Protest Changed Lives, the first thing they say is, recently on a women's march, I heard a sound I had not heard for a long time. It was a woman ululating, and it took me right back to Greenham Common, where women could make this strange, keening noise. Mass ululation would freak the soldiers out.
Ululation is often mournful, and it's always full of emotion. It's a common cultural reaction to a death, as well as a highly expressive way of grieving. In some cases, ululation can be celebratory or joyful rather than sad. It's been used to mean wailing since the 16th century, and its origin traces back to the Latin word with that same meaning, ululationem.
Oh, the ululation could be at the sign of a threat, a little bit like a warning, or it was more of a triumphant noise, or when I was there and we were doing it, it was to add to the impact we were trying to make. So certainly the day when we all linked hands around the perimeter, there was a lot of ululation going on. It was a noise we could all join in, not like songs where people would sing out of tune or forget the words. It could be interpreted as a noise of defiance or triumph.
Some of the protest songs she mentioned were a Bob Dylan song, The Times They Are A-Changing.
We were very much influenced by Bob Dylan's songs and Joan Baez's Give Peace a Chance and Blowing in the Wind and We Shall Overcome and Times Are A-Changing. They were all the protest songs that were sung whenever you were protesting, wherever you were protesting. And I can remember at any protest singing all those songs, really believing that that things were going to get better and times were a-changing and we were going to overcome. And it makes me weep now to feel that we've got nowhere, William. We've gone backwards. You know, millions of us marched against the Iraq War in 2003 and went down with thousands and thousands of other people to object to Tony Blair for daring to think about going to war in Iraq. They took no notice whatsoever. No notice whatsoever.
Maybe some of that regret that it wasn't fully sort of listened to or acted upon is part of what is important about unearthing these messages in oral history.
Our protest songs are still needed.
If you want to describe where you found the actual composition or piece.
Yeah, so it was in a box in the archives, the Mayday room, and they have a whole archive section for Scratch Orchestra full of graphic scores and CDs and all the kind of ephemera of some of the people that were involved in it. Because at the Mayday rooms, all the archives are brought to them by people who, by and large, were parts of the situations and the movements that the files are archiving. And then, do you want to talk about the process of transcribing it?
Yeah, it was originally written for stringed instruments, any number of them, and basically you would just start playing this composition. It's very rudimentary, simply written out, which doesn't require you to have any sort of prior knowledge of music or anything like that. And you just begin playing, carry on at your own speed, and follow what's written down and just interpret it really openly. So I quite like the idea of, now that everyone's locked away and doesn't really have access to maybe renting instruments or finding them from friends or borrowing them, everyone pretty much has access to a computer keyboard. You can play just like anything from GarageBand to like more complex packages like Ableton and stuff like that. So the idea was that by transposing the piece for strings to piano, anyone can join in, anyone can play it from wherever they are, doing whatever they want.
For this track, I take the conversations in the chats of queer Zoom clubs and run it through a text-to-speak generator and isolate the different vocal tones and intonations of the conversation and create a track note by note based off of the voice.
Deep listening is listening in every possible way to everything possible to hear, the sounds of daily life, of nature, or one's own thoughts as well as musical sounds. Deep listening represents a heightened state of awareness and connects to all that there is. Focal listening garners detail from every sound, and global listening brings expansion through the whole field of sound.
subtle but uplifting in a way, especially when it gets to the last part, when the build up continues.
I thought it sounded like lots of things being dragged, and then towards the end it sounded like lots of things being carried. Cool. I had a dream last night that I maxed out my carrying capacity, like in Skyrim, and I couldn't fast travel anywhere. And I had my dog with me and loads of bags. One of them was full of loose chains.
So stressful.
One of them was full of like cans of Stella. It was really weird.
I love the bird sounds. The bird sounds are so nice. The way you've edited them. I think there were bird sounds in there, right?
Yeah, like right at the end, sort of heard like a one of those like metal like swings that sit outside in the garden and like bird sounds.
And wind as well, I think. The wind.
Yeah.
There's a really cool website which maps out like bird sounds all around the world. It's like crowdsourced, so people just upload and you can like go on a Google map and like find where you are. It's called xenocanto.org, XENO. Then there's like a hyphen, then it's CANTO.
Hopefully this track inspires some kind of bristly visuals in your mind's eye.
Dragonfly with a tail, top of a flowers then
There was multiple people who had done online works.
Yeah.
You know, like websites, a lot of sound, a lot of music and shit. Yeah. And in a specific moment, one of my friends, Eduardo, brought up that because of this period of time that we are spending indoors, the boundaries between what is considered art and what is considered music and what is just considered a compilation of information of your surrounding environment, all of that is blurred. And there's no real ultimate like name as to what it is that these products of sound, of music that we have made with these interviews become. It's sort of just like we're virtually mapping with sound our environments and what we have been doing for the past couple months. So I don't know, I think it's really interesting that like that everything has become so transparent, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of blurred at the same time.
I don't know about you, but I feel like on this project, at least, everyone's trying and create some kind of space for themselves. And so many people are like dealing with environments and space and trying to blur that line. I kind of want to like find out if you sound different in Russian and English, because I find that so often with people who are bilingual that like the voice that they speak with, like my best friend's German, the voice she speaks with in German is like 3 tones higher than the voice she speaks with in English. And I just want to know if you sound different.
Yeah. It's like that. Definitely. Because the way you have to arrange your muscles in your throat and tongue, because in each language there are different fluctuations of sound that come from, like it's fucked up, like knowing 3 languages, switching in between them. I'll sometimes try and say something and I'll think of it in German, translate it into Russian, and then translate it into English before I say it. That's the process that goes on in my brain before I figure out what it is that I'm trying to say. Like, there's so much shit going on in my head when I speak because of that. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I was speaking to a couple people in my tutorial, and it was quite listening to their perspective on digitalized artwork and how we're all using some sort of, you know, internet inspired technology in a sense, like internet, so like found media as well. Like I've been doing a lot of stuff in some of the music that is in the deep listening section. I have some things that are specifically sampled, like from things that I've found on the internet or interviews or again spoken word and such. And I think that like because of how accessible everything is, it's easy to like mix and mash and just put all this shit together and not really know exactly what to call it.
Would we be doing the same work if we weren't in quarantine? I think is the big question here.
No, for sure. I don't know. I probably would not be doing this if I was not in quarantine. The reason for that is because I had a whole different perspective of my practice before this whole thing started. I realized how important my environment is in facilitating the process of creating artwork and music and sound and video and whatnot, and how important those factors are, what roles they play. And I think it's also allowed us to like kind of reconnect and have like a closer look at the things that surround us, like the birds and shit that, you know, we hear on a daily basis that aren't, you know, such prevalent sounds that we hear in the city when we're going to university on a daily basis and whatnot. I think it's been a little bit humbling, you know, in a sense. You kind of appreciate your surroundings and your privileges. Yeah. And it's a different experience for sure.
Yeah, I just found it difficult to make any kind of physical work, knowing that it probably would not be viewed until long after quarantine. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So just like the idea of, like I made like before all this happened, I was doing like embroidery a lot, and then I tried continuing that when we went into quarantine, but I just found that the whole repetitive, like process-based way of making just became so, it just felt really obsolete and pointless. Just I knew that the only way anyone would ever view this piece, you know, for the foreseeable future would be through a photograph. So why does the piece that is a physical piece mean anything more than the design, the 2D picture?
I know what you mean. It's almost like you're creating, but for no reason. I get it. I think that the fact that we're in this situation, in this environment, it's, you know, showing us, or each of us individually, something about the way that what the process that we have with creating stuff, you know. It's been quite like revealing to me, because I haven't made this kind of stuff before, you know. This is all new to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's new to a lot of people as well, just this kind of way of working from, you know, just your room on your computer. So
I wonder if people who are on the like open university courses, I wonder if the way that they're working has changed at all, or if they've experienced like the same like level of upheaval that we have, because the situation will be the same everywhere, but if you're already in an online environment, then are there the same parameters set out? Like,
yeah, well, like I have two younger cousins who both go to school, and they they go to school online on a daily basis, but it's so irregular and so like far away from what school really actually is meant to be. Or I don't know, I don't particularly agree with education like the way it is the way it is in school, in like classic school. I think it should be modernized and adapted to an extent, but like the things that they do, it feels like they do is irrelevant. Like all the tests that they have, they just get to cheat because they have information. You're sitting here in front of your computer, no teacher is going to see you using your phone right here, you know what I mean? And they're just, yeah, it's pointless. It's not education. They're just basically wasting time and money and getting nothing from it, and also getting nothing from these institutions. And the way that they, you know, that's also interesting, is how these institutions react in these scenarios. I think that like what is unique about our situation is that we have Annie and Robin and people around us that are, you know, getting us to come together and have these conversations. And like this group of people has good chemistry. We share information very well because of the fact that we started this project. If it wasn't for them and we all did different things, imagine if you know, we got some shitty Unit 7 project, or we were doing completely something different from this. I think Unit 7 really saved a lot of people's like motivation, and like I know that everyone's like working because of this unit and because of the tutors that they got. Like we're still progressing in our own way, you know. This has become my studio practice. Like
I feel like if we
but
weren't
yeah.
sound art, we struggle a lot more than we have because it's all online anyway. Most people, at least, if they're doing sound art, it's all done on your computer. So I feel like we got lucky. We did get very lucky.
Yeah, you spoke earlier about this person that you interviewed being intimidating.
I found him intimidating, not because he was intimidating. I found him intimidating because I knew him as my best friend's dad, and I know, obviously, I know I have this bias. Not a bias, but like I have like a schema of who I expect him to be based on what my best friend has told me about him. I had these preconceptions there that I think, I don't know, do you know your interviewee?
Yeah, he's
know?
my godfather.
Oh, he's your godfather.
Yeah, that's strange that we both like did interviews with people that somehow are closely related to people that we know, or directly related to family.
I feel like, I don't know if it would have been more nerve-wracking interviewing someone who was a stranger, just because like I know I probably would never see them again. Or if he's just far removed enough that it's still fairly uncomfortable, or if I would have been more nervous interviewing someone who was closer to my family, just because if I mess up, then I know that they'll, you know, probably be in the group chat to my mum being like, oh my god, didn't you hear what Izzy did today? Yeah, that kind of thing.
I don't know. My experience was rather relaxed, but I also kind of struggled communicating, I guess, in, I don't know, for some reason it was difficult for me to fully contextualize the questions that I was asking. So
Oh yeah.
the interview kind of turned into a conversation that wasn't directed. It wasn't like I was, on the news broadcasting an interview with someone. It was like very personal. It kind of swayed in between topics. For a while we were just talking about my mom, and then he would mention something, and I'd ask him a question about like the hazmat suits that they wear, and he would start talking about how he doesn't get to like eat or drink or pee or do anything or like leave the room that he's in for 10 hours every single day. He can't do anything because he's isolated in that place with all the patients, trying to like not get people sick, and the government forbids these people to exit these places legally. Even if you need to go to the bathroom, you're not allowed to do that for 10 hours. Your shift starts and it ends and in between you don't get to do anything. You just have to do your job for 10 hours. And then it would shift back into like, oh, but how are you? Oh yeah, I'm good. My son's like growing up, and oh, how's university? And I would bring up the project that I'm doing now and how I'm going to use this interview or conversation that it had turned into after this kind of fluctuation of close, intimate kind of topical conversations, and then all of a sudden coronavirus talk. And I think that that's like become pretty prevalent in any kind of conversation, whatever. Anyways,
Do you think that our generation, being like the younger generation, is kind of desensitized to like disasters and stuff? Just because honestly I find that people of our generation aren't taking the virus as seriously as people of the older generation. I think it's just because we're just very oversaturated with media and like internet presence of like disasters and stuff, that we don't really take these things on.
And I think even not even older people, but just like our parents, I think. For me, because all of my friends' parents are so paranoid about this and like so completely immersed by the media, whereas I think we are desensitized, but also in a sense, like we have to look at this logically and from a more relaxed standpoint. A lot of people are taking this
But yeah, like your interview is really, really interesting, and like it's almost slightly surreal listening to the like serious talk about COVID and how he's like his hospital was preparing them to get like and stuff to meet with the incoming like demand for new patients, and then having it like be followed by like quite normal conversation, how he's like calling you Mikey. It seems very informal and almost like it's very humanizing of essential workers. It is a very familial conversation.
Yeah, I think your conversation was really interesting. And I get what you mean, like feeling intimidated by the fact that like there's some sort of predisposed expectation that you have when you speak to someone that like that. I know the same exact type of person that you're interviewing in this Martin, like fucking some Christie's thing, and he is exactly like this guy. He's like very calculated, communicates in a very calculated, formal way. Even if it's casual, it's calculated and sophisticated.
I think subconsciously I very much went into it wanting to like not impress them, but like not make a twat out of myself. I think when it comes to inviting anyone into like a project, especially if it's someone that you like respect, there is like a real level of like anxiety surrounding how you are gonna go about talking to that person, especially with like a project where it's like the university and it's going to be like on a radio and it's going to be quite public. Like a level of stress there that I think I think comes with inviting people in to that kind of thing.
For sure. It's personal as well. Yeah, I get it.
Like it's personal, but it's sort of impersonal at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's personal because it's your project, but it's also impersonal because it's an academic thing, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, but I think I view this pretty personally. I think the academic process for me has become like more of a personal process rather than an academic process.
Алло. Привет. Ладно, тогда пару вопросов таких маленьких, если бы ты мог сказать, какая у тебя мотивация, сколько тебе лет? Все понял, врач. Какой врач? Интересно, если все проблемы. Понятно. Следующий пару будет личный проект, на котором я сейчас на данный момент работаю, процесс записи и в общем целом процесс произведения. Я хотел спросить, как себя чувствуешь насчет того, что ты занимаешь со мной разговаривать. Понял. Следующий вопрос какой? Что ты слышишь более как и на чем, как действует это. Мне интересно, что ты слышишь? Работа сейчас, время. Да. Я понимаю, что это такой вопрос. Непонятный. Просто. В костюме сложнее работать и чувствовать себя комфортно, помогает людям. Получается, что нельзя выходить совершенно из того корпуса или места, где ты находишься.
Alright guys, more in action.
This track explores Hong Kong post-coronavirus lockdown. It includes sounds from my daily activities as well as sound walks conducted by me. I also included a Tibetan Rinpoche's chant to protect everyone from the virus. I wish while listeners are listening to this, we achieve a sort of connection through the music.
In the making of this track, I got to thinking about how time travel might sound. It's just with a clarinet and guitar, and it's called Ex Snake Charmer.
I found it like quite enchanting, you know, guiding on the journey that keeps on going whenever the main rhythm comes back, really leading.
I when I was listening to it, I thought about the idea of this because it's called Ex Snake Charmer.
Yeah.
I thought about the idea of this like old snake charmer sat in his armchair looking back through like all these photographs of like him being a young snake charmer. So that idea of time travel, maybe not literally, but like strolling down memory lane, sort of like that nostalgia feeling of all his old snake charming days.
That we will all see each other on screen.
Recently, I've been focusing on the sound around me, the environment I'm in, and pulling together these sounds to create compositions that mark the moment and pull the focus into the here and now.
Connection. Give me a refund.
Longing for being incredibly drunk, firing fireworks off of my friend's roof again.
Thanks Mayday Radio for having us, and thank you to the Her Noise Archive at LCC, the British Library Sound Archive, and to our guest contributors Georgia, Fanny, Robin, Sam, Louise, Rosemary, Chris, Charlie, Irene and Andrea. And we all wanted to give a special thanks to Annie and to Robin for helping us through the whole process of making this, for teaching us, for bringing insight and interest to this entire unit and for making it so engaging despite us all being in disparate locations around the world. If you're still feeling sane, then stick around for our deep listening section right after this. Thank all of you for tuning in.